You asked what is my favorite part or parts of the museum, and I have to say that I enjoy them all, and I enjoy them equally because all aspects of Fayetteville's history are of an interest to me. In this particular exhibit, it's an area that we're able to engage both children and adults to talk about what this building used to be when it was built. It was a railroad station for the Cape Fear-Yadkin Valley Railroad. But this helps children and adults to realize that we operated in a different environment during the 19th century. The furnishings here speak to that. The windows with their transom pulls were the early air conditioning. The form of dress was quite different back then. People came to work not dressed for the climate, but more formal. So up here on the second floor in the summertime, when it would be very hot, the station agent would wear his hat. He'd wear a coat, a shirt, tie, pants. Would be quite uncomfortable. The transom windows would be opened, and he would hope for a little bit of a breeze to blow through. He would work at a desk like this, and this being a site where people connecting with a train would be brought here by animals, either pulling a wagon or a buggy or riding. In the wintertime, this would be very drafty and very cold, and you would rely on this little coal stove to keep you warm. But if you had to go to another part of the building, you might be quite chilly, so you would need to make sure that your desk was very close to this stove so that you could stay halfway warm during the long work days. Some of the things in here are quite unfamiliar, especially to children. We ask them, what is this piece of furniture here? Children just to feel the weight of this particular item. And it's heavy, very heavy, because with tobacco juice in it, you don't want it to fall over if it's kicked. So it's very heavy and it doesn't fall over. Most children know that this is a typewriter, and they know that computers today have taken the place of typewriters, but in another generation or so, this may become completely foreign to the next few generations. The work environment was very utilitarian. This is a roll-top desk that offers the ability to cover up your paperwork with those windows. Okay. Railroad was one of the big things, but really the reason Fayetteville is here is by virtue of the Cape Fear River being an inland port. So we can go downstairs and look at that exhibit if you'd like. A lot of times with the roads being so bad, soldiers would be transported on the river. For example, during the beginning of the Civil War, Fayetteville troops were transported on a steamboat to Wilmington, and then from Wilmington they were transported to Raleigh. Played a big role in transportation for these military personnel. And I might add that the military was important in Fayetteville prior to 1918 and the arrival of Fort Bragg. There were so many military units of the volunteer style that the whole eastern half of North Carolina, under George Washington's administration, was called the Fayetteville Brigade. The whole eastern part of North Carolina, because you had volunteer infantry, artillery, and cavalry in large concentrations. Now again, the first railroad does not arrive here until the 1850s, and really that is just 50 miles of track that does not connect, so the logistics aren't good. The tracks go from the Cape Fear River to the Egypt coal mines in present-day Sanford with no connection whatsoever. But when you say, how did it support the military? We had an arsenal here, and the Egypt coal mines had coal and pig iron that would be brought down to support the operation. About the military, we obviously think about Fort Bragg, and Fort Bragg is the largest military installation personnel-wise in the United States. A very important military installation with a lot of important units, but it arrived in 1918 during World War I. and it continued to grow and evolve from an artillery training post to the home of airborne and special forces and Delta and all the elite units in the United States Army. A lot of people have a stereotype idea of what a person that works in a museum does. And I think oftentimes when people let their imagination run wild, they think of a museum professional as somebody perhaps with a tweed suit, smoking a pipe, in the corner reading a book. And museum work is fascinating. It takes you into the field. You're not necessarily in the museum. You're out looking at things. You might find an old artifact that's been abandoned in the woods and figure a way to bring it back if it's worthy of being displayed at a museum. You might be out interviewing someone that's got a lot of institutional knowledge about something, collecting oral interviews, seeking out artifacts. We had a very old home burn in Fayetteville that had a treasure trove of old Fayetteville artifacts and paperwork. And the family said, go on and take what you want. So we ran a step ladder outside the old house, and the side of it was burned off, and we reached into the attic and pulled out many things that we now have added to our collection. The day may involve tours or interviews like I'm doing now, or research, or building an exhibit. This exhibit behind you showing a World War I trench is something that was fabricated by our staff here at the museum. So one day we're in blue jeans with hammer and nail. The next day we're in a suit and tie doing a tour or a presentation, an off-site presentations. A good example is this one here. This was a back-to-school exhibit as the children, although very limited now with the COVID, returned to school. We thought we would profile early education. So there's always something to learn about, and we try to keep these exhibits fresh, new, and interesting. Every year we feature different aspects of contributions of African Americans in the community, and this year it's early African American medical professionals, so doctors and dentists and veterinarians that came to Fayetteville at an early period and established their businesses here and added so much to the community. We profile the individuals and their contributions.
This is a 1924 fire truck that Fayetteville bought brand new back then, and they added it to the fleet. It was not the only one at the time, but it's a gas-powered fire truck with a pumper. It would pump water onto the fires as well. So this was pulled to the fire by the two horses, and once they got there, hopefully they would have a water source nearby, and they would dip the hose in the water source and squirt water on the fire. Most buildings back then were made of wood, so it was very, very important that they get there as soon as possible. This is Fayetteville's very first fire truck. It goes back to the mid-1880s. It didn't have an engine. It had two horses pulled it where it needed to go. And the big boiler was used to supply energy to the water pump itself. Used steam power. The firebox here activated this to get it going. And they would drive there, and hopefully whoever pulled the box might still be there, or it could be the fires. They'll see the fire. We don't know, but it gave them a point here. About 3 years ago, 3 years ago in September, they found several pieces of equipment that they had been saving as well. They were all stored in the same area, so they brought a lot of what you see now in these cases was brought to us at the same time we got the truck.